Welcome to Entrepreneurial Edge. Today, we're diving into 15 things you didn't know about Qatar. Get ready for some shocking revelations, some head-scratching facts, and maybe even a few laughs along the way. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more fascinating insights. Qatar's lunchtime feasts are a must-know cultural highlight. Now, you know how Americans love their dinner? Big Thanksgiving spreads, family coming together. Well, in Qatar, they like to get their feast on early. Lunchtime is prime time for the biggest meal of the day. Imagine you're just finishing up some emails, and a mountain of food descends upon the table. We're talking lamb, rice, spices that'll make your taste buds dance. And Fridays, it's a special time for lunchtime feasts, with families gathering after prayers to eat. Speaking of big, have you seen this airport? Hamad International, it's called. Located in Doha, it's not just big, it's consistently been awarded as the best airport in the world, handling 50 million passengers a year. Hamad International Airport has been named the world's best airport at the 2024 Skytrax World Airport Awards. The airport is so big that you could get lost in this place for days. They've got shops, restaurants, swimming pools. It's like they designed it to make you forget you're even supposed to be going somewhere. It's a place where you can truly relax and enjoy your time before your flight. Okay, now let's talk about something that'll really get your engines revved up. Gas prices. See, Qatar sits on a sea of oil. And what do you do when you've got more oil than you know what to do with? You give the people cheap gas. We're talking about 58 cents a liter. You could fill up your tank for the price of a latte in some places. It's one of the many perks of living in a country rich in oil reserves. Now, before you book your ticket to this land of cheap gas and lunchtime feasts, there's something you should know. Qatar takes its dress code seriously. See, Qatar's a predominantly Muslim country and they value modesty. That means covering up, folks. No, your Speedo doesn't count as covering up, even if you're just going from the pool to the buffet. Tourists, locals, everyone's expected to dress respectfully. Think shoulders covered, knees covered. Respect the local customs and dress appropriately. Speaking of keeping things respectful, let me introduce you to the richest man in Qatar, Sheikh Hamad bin Khalifa. This guy's got more money than a rapper's Instagram feed. We're talking an estimated net worth of $800 million. That's enough to buy a private island, a fleet of sports cars, and still have enough left over to start your own space program. And where'd he get all this dough, you ask? Well, he was the Minister of the Interior. Security is a highly profitable industry. But hey, even with all that money and security, Qatar's had its fair share of trouble. Back in 1787, their neighbors in Saudi Arabia decided to pay a little visit. And by visit, I mean invade. This event marked a significant moment in Qatar's history. It makes for an important history lesson. Speaking of international incidents, remember the Panama Papers? That whole leak of financial documents that exposed a bunch of shady dealings by the rich and powerful? Turns out their former prime minister, Hamad bin Jassim, was allegedly involved in some questionable financial activities. And if you thought the Panama Papers were bad, hold on to your hats, because in 2017, Qatar found itself in the middle of a full-blown diplomatic crisis. Their neighbors, including Saudi Arabia and the UAE, decided to cut ties with Qatar, accusing them of supporting terrorism. This diplomatic spat forced Qatar to get cozy with Iran and Turkey. The situation created significant tension in the region. Thankfully, in January 2021, Qatar and Saudi Arabia agreed to a resolution of the crisis. On the bright side, if you do decide to visit Qatar, you can at least feel safe knowing it's one of the safest countries in the world. Low crime rates, no natural disasters to speak of. It's basically the Switzerland of the Middle East. And while we're on the subject of things that are good, let's talk about Qatar's wealth. With a per capita income of $125,000, Qatar is the richest country in the world. That means the average Qatari has more money than they know what to do with. This wealth is reflected in their giant airports and elaborate lunchtime feasts. But it's not all sunshine and roses in Qatar. Despite all the progress they've made, they still have a long way to go when it comes to gender equality. Women in Qatar face limitations in education, work, and even just their everyday lives. It's like they're stuck in a time warp, while the rest of the world is moving on. Hopefully, Qatar will continue to make strides towards true progress and equality for all. Speaking of progress, let's talk about the 2022 FIFA World Cup. Qatar hosted the 2022 FIFA World Cup, which is a big deal because it's the first Arab country to do so. They've built all these new state-of-the-art stadiums, but there's a dark side to all this glitz and glamour. The treatment of migrant workers who built these stadiums has been widely criticized. Reports of abuse, exploitation, and even deaths have cast a shadow over the entire event. But despite these allegations, the 2022 World Cup final will go down as one of the most exciting, dramatic, and memorable matches in the history of the game. Now let's lighten the mood a bit with a little cultural quirk. In Qatar, if you compliment someone's possessions, be prepared to part with them. That's right. In Qatari culture, admiring something openly obligates the owner to give it to you as a gift. And I'm not just talking about material possessions here. Apparently, this even applies to wives, at least according to traditional views. Understanding these customs can enrich your experience in Qatar. Speaking of things that are a little backwards, let's talk about censorship. The Qatari government is known for keeping a tight leash on the media and the internet. Anything deemed offensive or critical of the ruling class is promptly censored. It's like they skipped the whole free speech chapter of the Democracy Handbook. And speaking of expensive, let's talk about rent in Qatar. If you thought finding an affordable apartment in New York City was tough, wait till you try to find a place in Doha. Due to limited land availability, rent in Qatar is sky high. We're talking $1,900 a month for a one-bedroom apartment. That's enough to make you want to live in a tent in the desert. So there you have it, folks. 15 things you probably didn't know about Qatar. From cultural feasts to diplomatic engagements, this tiny nation sure knows how to keep things interesting. If you enjoyed this tour of Qatar, be sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more fascinating insights from around the world.